Before we get started, I would like to, hang on, that doesn't work. Oh, we're gonna do it this way then, that's fine. Okay, um, so before we get started, I want to do a writing exercise with you guys. I want you to take a minute to either pull up your notes app or a sticky note, grab one, grab your journal, whatever the case may be. And I want you to take 2 minutes to write down 5 reasons why you want to be a full-time artist. I'll go ahead and wait, and then we could share our responses in just a moment. All right, you guys ready to share? Okay. AC, are you in there? Okay. Well, I was hoping we could share our responses with each other. So if anyone wants to volunteer, that would be cool. I could go ahead and start. I became a full-time artist because it was my dream to be an artist since I was 7 years old. And I had a lot of adults tell me that I couldn't be an artist because it wasn't a real job and that I couldn't make money and to come up with a better dream job. And that was a lie. And I didn't want to believe it anymore. And so about 3 years ago, I took the leap to start making art again and to pursue an art career. Does anybody else want to share their response before we go forward?
AC had something in the chat. AC, if you want to, you can feel free to unmic yourself. For everybody else who just joined, we're talking baseline why you want to be a full-time artist and really thinking through that decision making. What makes you want to become a full-time artist? So if you have an answer to that question, feel free to unmute yourself and express yourself verbally, or you can put it in the chat if that makes you feel more comfortable.
Everyone. My name is Angelica, by the way. Some of the things that I wrote were to simply create and have freedom with my own time and movement. And I personally feel that I am an artist by default. So I want, like, where I found the most joy and personal growth has been teaching and collectively being with other people through art. So that's just something that I've always known ever since I was young. So yeah.
Thank you for that, Angelica.
No problem. Thank you.
Does anybody else want to share before we move forward?
A couple more people have joined, so I am also going to reiterate this again. Before we get started, Onnissia has opened the floor. We're just talking about and thinking through why you want to be a full-time artist, really taking a moment to take a step back and think through that question. So if you have an answer to that, feel free to either unmute yourself and engage in the conversation or write it in the chat if that makes you feel more comfortable.
I don't know if I'm, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Marilva. I'm I think maybe one of the few artists that is living in Europe, the Netherlands. And I actually want to be a full-time artist because it's not just pursuing a dream or fulfilling a hobby, but it's really like understanding that this is how I would want to devote my time. This is how I want to represent my talent and really bring it out there to the world. And also, I do feel that I have a responsibility to tell the story here in the Netherlands and also here in Europe as a Black female artist, but also just as an artist, and make people see that as an artist, we specifically Black women, because I tell the normal daily life of Black women on my canvas, I do feel that that needs to be seen more and can be told about more, talked about more. So I do see a responsibility in that. There are a couple of artists that I've connected with in the Netherlands, so I do feel very motivated, but it's not enough. So for me, it has been quite a journey. It's not an easy one, but it's worthwhile. And I'm really willing to put myself in there and become a full-time artist for it.
Thank you for sharing that, Mariel. I appreciate you.
Yes, thank you.
All right, well, we're gonna go ahead and move forward. So as I said earlier, my name is Onnissia. I'm a gallery represented artist. And I said that I became a full-time artist because that was my dream, to always make art. And really quick, today we're just going to talk about my journey. We're going to talk about how I made the leap from working a day job or multiple day jobs, if you're like me, to going full-time. We're going to talk about some tips, some mistakes you want to avoid, and I'm going to share whatever resources I've used in the past to help me support my career as an artist. All right. So a little bit about me. I create bright and bold art about guiltless sexual expression and intimacy. As I said earlier, I currently have representation at the Smalter Gallery in Kansas City, Missouri. I also have representation at the Haze Gallery in Berlin. And a little bit about my journey. I grew up in California. I went to the University of Arkansas in 2010. I graduated from there with a Bachelor of Arts in Communications. I did not go to art school. I'm a self-taught artist. And I moved to Kansas City for a multitude of reasons, but one of the reasons why I moved here was because of the art community. And the thing that helped to drive my career forward, or the catalyst that I like to say, was that I was discovered by a gallerist while bartending, and I had 2 other jobs on the side. I also had like a little Etsy shop that I was selling my art from at that point in time. So a little bit about how I made the leap. 2020 hit me hard. So October 2020 was when I became an artist full-time and I made that decision. But prior to that, I had lost all 3 of my jobs. My car was repossessed. I was almost evicted. My credit got torpedoed. I was living off of noodles, rice, and beans. And I actually had a solo show that debuted the week the country shut down. Most galleries in the area had decided to close their doors, and I urged my gallerists to pivot to a live stream and showcase the art online. And I nearly sold out all of my pieces at that show. At this point in time, I own my own car, which is really nice. My credit is back on track. I'm about to pay off all my student loans, file for an LLC, and scale my business. So just moving forward there. Some things that contributed to my success moving to a full-time artist. Most importantly, I made a plan and I strategized. I also had a network that I could rely on. We're going to talk about social media presence a little bit. We're going to talk about meeting people in person as well. I also did a ton of research. I feel like people really don't think about this much, but the research aspect is how I learned to implement and strategize my plan. I also had a lot of discipline. I was dedicated to becoming full-time. And so I spent a lot of time outside of my day job preparing to become a full-time artist. And then I made sure that I got ready. So I made sure everything was in place to make sure that I could be successful when I made that leap. All right. So starting with, just a quick disclaimer, I want to tell you guys right now that it is very normal to backtrack. I've heard one artist take 5 times going between trying to be full-time and then going back to working a daytime before she got it right. So if you fuck up and you fail, pardon my French, do not be ashamed of that. It is very normal and it takes a few tries. So just be dedicated to the process and I promise you it'll work out. All right. So first and foremost, I made a plan. Um, I highly recommend that when you choose to go to be a full-time artist that you write down a plan. So figure out your expenses, figure out how much money you want to make, and figure out how much you need to work in order to make that work for you. I also recommend setting a deadline for yourself. So a few things. I'm just going to tell you about my process. After I lost everything, basically, I actually ended up having to borrow money from a friend to pay rent. And I decided that I was going to get back to work as quickly as possible. And so I searched for a job that was close by to me that I can get to. And I figured out my expenses. I figured out how much it was going to cost to get me to buy a car. I figured out how much I wanted to make as an artist full time. And I set a deadline that I wanted to be full time by the end of the year. The most important thing that I can recommend to you when you choose to go to be a full-time artist is to make a plan for sustainable income. Does anybody know what that means? Or wants to volunteer the answer? You could shout it out or drop it in the chat.
You just pretty much mean just make a plan so you can just pay your bills and whatever it is.
Yeah, thank you for that, Brian.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so sustainable income is basically income that sustains itself in your lifestyle, so that you can take care of yourself, basically. And so what I want to challenge you guys to do is to make a plan. If you're not familiar with the sales funnel, it's basically a way that you can funnel your revenue into one place. So research a sales funnel and create one for yourself to create sustainable income. And then don't be afraid to establish multiple streams of revenue. And we're going to talk about that later. And most importantly, set yourself up in such a way that it is easy to receive funds from people. That could be an online store. It could be sending invoices, whatever it is, make sure you're ready to receive as well. So I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about what I did specifically. I made my plan, as I said earlier, and my idea was I created the opportunity for myself. I went ahead and I basically decided I was going to take in a certain number of art commissions, and I planned for those art commissions to pay my funds and sustain myself for 3 months. And then I wash, rinse, repeat the process. That is literally what I did. And so I took in a certain number of clients, and then I would keep doing that over and over and over again. And that's how I had income coming in consistently. I also had other things happening on the side on top of that. So as an artist, it's important to be creative about your income. Make sure you brainstorm ways to be sustainable with your income. The next thing I want to share with you guys is to develop a network. So we're going to do a quick exercise. I want you to pick one person in the seminar right now that you do not know, and I want you to exchange contact information with them. And your goal after this session is to reach out to them and connect, share one interesting thing that you're doing for your art career, and do your best to keep in touch. And the goal of this is to make sure that in the future one day, if you want to help each other out or support each other, you can still do that. So take a minute to exchange contact information. We're going to come back. Literally pick anybody, or you could just drop it in the chat.
Hello, excuse me. This is Tiffany. It might be a little hard for me because I'm using my telephone number and I know my name isn't showing. So I don't know how I'm going to be able to participate.
Tiffany, why don't you email me later? Are you able to see the screen and everything?
No, I can't see the screen either. Something is going on with my phone. So Zoom, the visuals of Zoom wouldn't pull up. So I just made sure I dialed in.
Okay, well, we are recording this later. When you get the chance, don't be afraid to email me. I could connect you with the other artists at BlkArthouse.
Okay, no problem. That'd be great. Thank you.
All right, we're gonna go ahead and move forward and talk a little bit more about ways to maintain your network. Okay, so you could be the greatest artist in the world, but it does not matter if you don't know anybody. I'm sorry, that's the truth. Um, so what I want to recommend that you guys do is start developing your network now. When I first moved to Kansas City, I did not know anybody. My closest friend lived an hour away, and I wasn't going to do all that driving to go see her. So I would go to artist meetups. I would go to open mic nights. I would check out critique groups, workshops. I also recommend volunteering at local nonprofits or art galleries. Visit art shows. A lot of people there you can connect with, especially on opening nights and closing nights. Those are the best nights you can visit an art show to meet people. If you don't like meeting people or if you're not an extrovert, um, what I recommend that you do is have a good friend and let them gas you up for you. So one of my favorite things that I did for a while, my best friend Katie, whenever we go out, she likes to talk about me for me. Like I don't even say anything. She's like, "This is Onnissia, and this is all the cool stuff she's doing." And she literally like lists all the stuff I'm doing in like the last 6 months to this person that I don't even know, and I already have a connection because of her. So if you don't like meeting new people, my best advice to you is to get you a good extroverted friend and go out with them to these events to meet new people with you. That way they can talk about you for you. It's the best word of mouth that you can get. And it's coming out of somebody that you know and trust, and they'll do it just because they love you. All right. The other thing I want to recommend is invest time in your social media presence. In the digital age and in the age of the internet, it is so important to have a social media presence. So I can't go into this too much because it's literally its whole own beast, but a few things that I want to recommend that you do. Research shareable content. I also want to suggest that you guys do things like IG takeovers, that you do collaborations with other artists, especially if they have a larger following than you, because you can get in front of a bigger audience. You definitely want to go where your art buyers are. Um, Another thing that I want to recommend that you do is you could do things like giveaways, record yourself in your studio painting, talk about your technique and your method. But whatever you do, invest time in your social media presence. I cannot stress that enough. All right, the other thing that I want to recommend that you guys do is do your research, be nosy. I think one of the things that contributed to my success was I would be curious about other artists that had the lifestyle that I wanted, and I would investigate what they did. And so I would literally go on their website, I would look at what their website looked like, take notes on that, and then I would go to their CV page and see where they went. And I would see who represented them in the past. I would see what they were doing because I personally was not invested in reinventing the wheel. I want to do what they did and take methods that they used and apply it to what I was doing as an artist. So do your research, be nosy. Another thing that I did is I read blogs and articles about running an art business, and I still do that to this day. So I've read that a lot of CEOs spend a lot of time reading books about how to be leaders and how to run a business, and I recommend that you incorporate that into your practice as an artist. The other thing I want to recommend that contributed to my success was I learned about business. I actually took 2 different art classes for artists to start their own business. That was a large help. And it wasn't so much the building a business plan that was helpful, it was learning from other artists and what they did that helped me. So it's kind of falling back on that network process. Don't be afraid to attend an art class or a business class for artists and connect with those artists and learn what they did. Another thing that I did regularly was I would listen to podcasts that had hosts of artists and curators, and I would listen to what they were looking for and what they would talk about and see how I could apply their knowledge to what I was doing. So be curious, be creative, and learn from what other people are doing and apply that to what you want to do. Are there any questions so far? Going once, going twice. All right. So the next thing I want to talk about is developing discipline. I will tell you guys right now that I have a lot of free time because I'm single. I don't have any children. And so when I wasn't at work, I was working on my art career. I know that this is not possible for everyone. And so what I want to recommend that you do is set a schedule and stick to it. On Monday nights, maybe do research. On Tuesdays, make art. On Wednesdays, post about it, or read a blog. But whatever it is, invest time in your career and make sure you stay disciplined in that practice. If you will not invest time in your energy and into your success, no one else will. So be disciplined in how you pursue your art career. The other thing that I want to share with you guys is to be ready. I cannot stress this enough. There are so many artists who are just like, I'm an artist, and then I like want to talk to them or look at their Instagram or see what their artwork looks like, and I can't see it because there's no presence online. They don't have a website, they don't have a bio. You have to be ready. So some things I want to recommend: make a website, create a brief bio, have an artist statement available. One of my favorite things is to carry takeaway cards with you. They're not the same as business cards. Can you guys see my screen still? Like, can you see my face?
Yep.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, so this is a takeaway card. It's not a business card, it's a postcard, and it has my information on it. It has my art on the front, and it's got a little bit about me on the back. And the reason why I love these is because there have been so many times when people would be like, hey, I tell them I'm an artist, and then they're like, oh, what does your art look like? And then I have to pull out my phone and fumble for Instagram, and it's not curated or pretty, and it's goofy looking. You want to be ready. And so having this card was so easy because I could just pull it out of my purse or out of my car and give it to them. And they would have something they could put on their fridge or remember me by and contact me in the future with. And it shows my art and it tells them a little bit about me. So this is a really solid investment. I actually got mine made for free by Canva. And I'll talk about resources here in a minute, but carry takeaway cards. Those are really important to have. Also have the means to send and receive invoices. This seems like a no-brainer, but it's important to have the means to do that. If you're not making your own, get a program that can help you do that. And lastly, trust your gut and take the leap when you're ready. So some ideas for revenue. I love selling prints. They're super easy to make and to sell. It's almost automatic at that point. I'll talk about resources for that in a minute. Also, don't be afraid to teach art classes. I know, well, I don't know her in real life, but I saw a young lady who recently had a art exhibition at the Rockefeller Center in New York, and she was teaching an art class on top of the roof a few days later. So teach art classes, do pop-ups. Don't be afraid to reach out to businesses that are close by to you and do pop-up shops with them. Another thing that you can do is art collaborations. There are people in the industry that want to work with you. You could do t-shirts, you could do pins, whatever the case may be, but don't be afraid to reach out and do art collaborations. I also currently make work for a magazine. It's an online publication that actually sells sex toys. But but I make work for them. That's another way to earn income. You could also make art commissions. This is my main source of income right now as an artist. Also do group shows, art fairs, and don't be afraid to reach out to online art galleries. So art galleries like Saatchi, ArtNeta, ArtNet, these are all resources that can help you sell your art online and get them in front of people who are art buyers.
BlkArthouse.
Yeah, there you go. Boom, there you go. That one's obvious. So be creative about how you make money. Some mistakes to avoid. These are just things I've heard from other artists. Don't assume that galleries or art agents will do all the work for you. You are your own best advocate. So be for you, and be for you as hard as you can be, because nobody else will be. The other thing I want to tell you is don't assume people will pay you. That has happened to me before in the past, and it really sucked. So don't assume people will pay you for your work. I've actually had to make a practice of saying, is this a paid opportunity? I literally ask that every time, is this a paid opportunity, before I even agree to anything. The other thing that I want to tell you is do not work until you get paid for something. I usually like to take a deposit up front or a retainer fee. That way you are paid for retention, and if something falls through, you still got paid for some of the work that you did. So it's just something you want to remember. Do not rush this process. I want to say that it took me total 3 years to get everything together. Like I said before, there was that one artist that took 5 tries to get it right. So take your time, get all your ducks in a row, don't rush it. And lastly, don't be afraid to make that leap. You'll know when you're ready. So this is probably the next most important page are these resources I want to share with you guys.
Quick, Onnissia. Oh, can you hear me? Yeah, you can.
I can hear you.
What were some of those online galleries that you mentioned before?
Oh, there's Saatchi Art. I think it's SACTCIA. I'll double check the spelling for you guys. But Saatchi is one of them. ArtNet, ARTNET. No, it's ArtNeta, which is ARTNEDA, I believe. I think they're mostly European based. But those are just a few online galleries, and of course, BlkArthouse is resources, which is a resource to you guys here as well. But take advantage of those. You can literally make an account and post your art for sale online. Those galleries will take commission from you if they do sell work, but it's another place where you can have your work available to showcase. So here are some of the resources I want to share with you guys that helped me in my process. As for learning, and you guys can write this down or screenshot this page, I don't care. Some things that helped me, I Like Your Work podcast shares a lot of work from other artists and curators and what they're looking for and how to kind of get your ducks in a row. Same with the Create podcasts, they're really helpful. As far as taking online business classes for artists, I recommend Culture Hustlers. They also offer a book that you can learn from them with. If you need to order a book, go ahead and do so. Artists Inc. was another program that I joined. They're Midwestern based. If you can't do either of those two, I recommend checking out art schools to see what they offer or community colleges in your area. If you can't get into an art class for artists, or excuse me, if you can't get into a business class for artists, I recommend just taking a regular business class where you can just kind of learn something about like making your business plan and kind of making sure that you have a strategy for you as an artist. Blogs that I really love to read. I have subscribed to Shopify. Shopify is their business is they sell or kind of market, they basically make online stores for creatives, and they have a really brilliant blog that shares a lot of the process behind the scenes for things like marketing, for having a plan for shipping, things like that that are super helpful. I recommend subscribing to them. I like to read them, but there are other options that are out there. As far as support, I recommend finding a mentor. And if you can't find a mentor, find an artist that you look up to, and kind of follow what they're doing. I also recommend reaching out to them and asking them for help or questions. A lot of artists are really friendly and they want to help out. I don't know about mentors, but a lot of artists are willing to share their knowledge. So don't be afraid to ask people questions and be nosy. The other thing I want to tell you is to talk to other artists about what they're doing that are your peers, and share tools with each other. So when I told you guys to exchange information earlier, don't be afraid to help each other out in the future. I also know that BlkArthouse has a Facebook page. I don't know if there's an ongoing group chat, Tatiana, but I know that the one that we had with the previous cohort, that was super helpful. So don't be afraid to reach out to each other and talk about anything from how to varnish something to how to send an invoice. Other artists are there to help you and help take care of you. Some tools that I like to use, I use every single day. QuickBooks Self-Employed is what I like to use to send invoices and receive income. I also use Canva to help me with my social media presence and designs. And then I use Later and Hootsuite sometimes to schedule those posts so that I'm not doing it all the time because that's very exhausting. BigCartel is one of my favorite ones. If you don't have a lot of resources to start your online art store right now, BigCartel offers a free option to sell your artwork. And then you could also upgrade to like $10 a month and upgrade more and more from there. So that's an option to kind of get your feet or to kind of get started. And then I also recommend Squarespace if you don't have your website ready yet. I think Wix offers a free option. I'm not really sure. but have a place to showcase your art, and look at what other artists, professional artists, are doing to showcase their art on their website and kind of mimic what they're doing. As far as art opportunities, these are things that help me to kind of get ahead. Art Open Calls is an account that I like to follow on Instagram. They post open calls all of the time. Please follow them, learn, see what they're offering, and try some opportunities to get your art out there. Another thing that I like to recommend is Pick Up the Flow NYC. They're based in New York, but they share art opportunities all the time, all over the world. So follow them on Instagram. I also recommend following the galleries you want to work with or publications you want to work with, because they will share your work for you and they'll get you in front of people that are interested in buying your artwork. Also follow other artists that you want to work with. I do want to recommend, I didn't include this in the presentation because I thought of it after the fact, but another thing that I love is Call for Artists. That's Call for Artists. It's also called Cafe for short. And they send a newsletter to you once a week about opportunities across the country that you could apply for as an artist. So I recommend subscribing to them for opportunities to get your work out there as well. Other things that you could do, reach out to local businesses to carry your art and make your own opportunities. I heard of an artist in New York who was literally having an exhibition in her apartment to share her artwork. So like, don't be afraid to like be a little weird and make your own opportunity for yourself. All right. So that's kind of all that I have to share with you guys today. Thank you for listening. I hope you learned something, and I will go ahead and open the floor to questions.
Yay, thank you so much, Onnissia. That was great.
Yeah.
So I will actually kick it off if nobody else has any questions, because I am so curious about your art journey and everything that you've been able to accomplish in the past year. It's been amazing to watch. What would you say has been the most difficult part of transitioning to becoming a full-time artist, and how did you overcome that?
The most difficult part, there are some things that I feel like are chores that I don't really like doing, which comes with being a full-time artist. So like, I feel like people think that being a full-time artist is just like painting in your studio all the time, and that's not the case. There's a lot of business aspect that you have to be on top of. You're literally running a business. So like, I really hate social media. I'll be upfront right now. And I recently consulted somebody to help me with it, because I just like hated running it all the time. But like, that's a chore for me and I hate it so much, but it's so important because it helps to get my art out there, you know? So I think probably the most difficult aspect is like doing those chores that I don't like doing as an artist, or sorry, as a business person. The art's the fun part, because I could just be in my studio and listen to music and like be high or whatever and be fine. It's really the business aspect. Sometimes it's really a chore. So it takes discipline to move through that. You've got to have the discipline.
Yeah, I totally feel you on the social media part. Even for like BlkArthouse, it's insane to have to try to post once, twice, 3 times a week. So definitely get that.
Yeah.
Anybody else have questions?
I have a question. Did you get discovered by galleries, or was it that you took the initiative to say, hey, to put yourself out there and introduce yourself and say, well, I've seen your gallery and I think that my art could be maybe a good contribution to your establishment? How did that work for you in general? Because I can understand that for everyone it works differently, but how did it work for you?
Yeah, it was a little bit of both. So with the Smalter Gallery, they discovered me while I was bartending. I carded the gallerists and they got mad that I carded them. And I was just like, I'm doing my fucking job. Excuse me. I cuss. That's the thing that I do. But I'm like, I'm doing my job. Why are you mad? And we kind of got off on the wrong start, but we started talking about art and they're like, I have a group show coming up. You should apply. And then from there, my artwork at the group, I had 6 pieces and all my artwork sold out within the first week. And they wanted to bring me on full time after that and be a represented artist. The other opportunity was with Haze Gallery in Berlin. And that kind of happened, I don't want to say by accident. The gallerist there was offering an opportunity to have consultations, and I won the consultation. And I had the mindset, I was like, I hope that I can be represented by them. That was like what I had in mind. And I just went and I was like, if I could get that, that's like the best case scenario. Worst case, I learned something from them, right? And so I had a conversation with them. I had all these questions during our consultation. It was very engaging and very much so myself. And by the end of the conversation, the gallerist said, "Would you be interested in being represented by me? I love your energy and your artwork." And I was like, "Yeah." She said, "Send me your portfolio and we'll see if you're a good fit." And then I did. And I had a portfolio ready to go. So I actually literally used Canva, which is that program I mentioned earlier, Canva. I'll put it in the chat. But I used Canva to create my art portfolio to make it look like kind of like almost like a blog page or something, something that's really visually appealing. And so they had my bio in there, they had my artwork and how much it sold for, it had my CV, and I made it look really sexy. Like no one wants to look at like a boring piece of portfolio that's just like pictures. You want to make it engaging. And that was what sold them, was how I had my portfolio put together, and of course being myself. Um, so a lot of galleries do have some strict parameters. I know that there's some that I have been thinking about that I want to be represented by, but I can't get in the door just yet because I'm not there yet. Um, for example, there's New Image Gallery that's based in, I think, Hollywood, California, or maybe Santa Monica. But they represent some like super like high-end artists, and I would love to be represented by them one day. And my goal is to literally make a book, because they don't take people. They're just like, "We find you." I want to take a book one day and send it to them and just say like, "This is my artwork," and hope that they will like it and reach out to me. But that's just something to be creative about. Don't be afraid to be creative about how you get your foot in the door. Sometimes sending that email doesn't always work. So be innovative and be memorable. That's also important. People like your story the most. They want to hear about you. The artwork is important, but your story is also important too. And you mentioned that earlier. Other questions at all?
Looks like Philip has a question.
Hello, this is Tiffany again.
Hey, Tiffany.
You mentioned, you touched base about prints, but I don't believe you went kind of deep into it earlier.
Oh,
You were talking about prints of the
yes.
artwork.
Yes. Excuse me. I talked about Big Cartel a little bit, so I'll talk about my experience with prints. I had prints made by a local print shop recently. Well, not recently, but this was like a while back. But I didn't want to pay for a whole platform to just sell art prints because I didn't have the money just yet. And so I saw another artist. The artist, they're called BlkArthouse. His real name is Christian, but I found him on Instagram. And he posted his artwork on Big Cartel one day. And me being nosy, I was like, "What is Big Cartel? How do I get involved?" And so I researched Big Cartel, and they let you post your store for free. And so that's how I started selling my art prints online. Was I literally set up a free print shop through Big Cartel. And you could sell anything there. You could sell, I think they give you 6 products that you can post online for free. And it's literally your own store. And so I posted 6 prints, and I kept posting them until I had enough income to go to the next level and actually buy, I guess, an official store with them. And from there, I could broaden my inventory and offer things like coupons to people, have like a subscription thing going. And so Big Cartel is kind of how I helped to kind of get, print revenue coming into me. But I mentioned it earlier because it was free. Sometimes we don't always have the income to start things. And so you got to think like a business person, like, what can I do cheapest, but also get things out there? So Big Cartel is a big one that helped change the game for me.
And I had something to ask additionally to that. So for printing your artwork, are you to sell your main piece first, then sell prints, or can you sell prints first, then sell your big art piece, like your original art piece? Does that make sense?
For a minute there, I was very adamant about selling the original piece first, but then I realized sometimes that it wasn't always affordable. And the whole reason of having prints is to have affordable art for people who can't afford the original, but want a piece of it. And so I kind of let that go. I got out of my own way because I was in my own way, and I made that a possibility.
Philip, you've had your hand up for a while, so I'm gonna pass it over to you.
Yeah, ignore that message group chat because I was just like typing shit out. But so 2 questions. The first one, I'm familiar with Canva, like I said, but did you say that Canva printed the takeaway cards for free? Because I'm definitely interested.
They did. So this is kind of what I made with them here. And it was kind of a goof up, but I ended up getting them for free for me. You could find new ways to do that. I also know that, crap, where was I going with this? With Canva, I ended up taking something like a regular postcard and I just put my artwork in there and I just dropped it in. And you could take that design anywhere you want to as well. So if they don't give it to you for free, you could take it anywhere that you want to, like Office Depot, which I don't know if they have the best ink printing process personally, but like that's just an option. So don't be afraid to be creative again about cutting those costs if you need to.
And then also, what are your own pros and cons for your own situation with representation?
Oh, ooh, that's a hot question. My pro is that it really helped me to realize that I could, one, make it as an artist full time. If I had not gone down that route, I don't think I ever would have realized that I could be a full-time artist. So that's something that is definitely a pro. It gave me the motivation to find my own clients and to establish a relationship with them. A con was that I failed to set expectations of what I wanted from the gallery. And so I had to learn this the hard way. You have to set expectations with galleries about what you want from them because they won't do it. If you don't spell it out, they're just not going to do it for you. Because they're thinking like me. They're like, how can I cut costs and still make money from this artist? Because I got to pay rent too. So as I said before, be for yourself. Don't be afraid to advocate for yourself. And definitely, if you can do anything, please take away that lesson that I didn't. I had to learn the hard way. Set expectations for yourself. If you want them to post on social media 2 times a week about your artwork, say that. Write it in an email. Get it written in a contract. I don't care how you do it, but make sure it's known to them about what you want from them.
Thank you. That was fire.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely put it in a contract.
Yeah.
I will say that over everything. As a lawyer, obviously that's where I'm coming from, but we are also doing an art contract and negotiation seminar as well for anybody who's interested. I think
definitely go to that.
June. So anybody who's interested in that, we actually will be having an art lawyer talking to us, so that'll be exciting. So Paul Jr., you've had your hands raised. You want to ask a question?
Yes, to Onnissia, just one short question.
Mm-hmm.
How can we find a subject that easily or quickly sells? How to find subject or topics that sell?
I will tell you that you have to find your own subject. And here's why. I realize in this, and I'm sorry for being callous, but people will buy anything. People will buy a couture trash bag from Gucci and think it's beautiful. People will buy anything. And so it's important to, one, tell your story because people buy you and your story, not the artwork. And that's with anything. Any product you sell, people buy you, not what you're selling. So have your story set, make it bite-sized and edible so people can chew on it and really digest it, and sell you. You're what's most important. The product does not matter as much as your story.
Yeah, thanks. That's helpful. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I have one question. Would you recommend the same approach for 3-dimensional art? Because I feel like it's a lot easier with 2-dimensional. You can do prints easier and things like that. But with sculptures, it's a bit different.
Yeah. With sculpture art, I'm not as familiar with the industry, but what I would say is I would look at what other sculpture artists are doing that you admire and really do your research in how they were able to make a sustainable income for themselves. And kind of, I don't want to say copy paste what they've done, but learn from what they're doing and see how you can apply it. I would also recommend checking out art business classes to kind of help you figure out what the best method is for you. But if you can't do that, I definitely recommend looking at what other sculpture artists are doing to be successful.
Thanks.
I just thought of another question if nobody else has something right now. But so how do you feel? Do you feel like people of other races can genuinely connect to your artwork?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Um, and I will say this too. Yes, I'm a Black artist, but I don't make Black art, if that make like traditional like I don't make traditional Black art in that sense. That's a personal choice for me. I've always kind of, I don't want to say I stay away from it, but I feel some type of way personally about having a white artist buy artwork that is like Black or traumatic. There's just something about that doesn't sit right with me, and so I try to stay away from it. But the beauty of my work is that it's silhouettes and they're all different colors. And so people can always put themselves into that space, you know? So I'll just show you this example. So like here specifically, there's nothing descriptive about this, but it is just an image and someone could be like, oh, that's me, or like, that's how I feel connected to this person, or whatever that image is. I already forgot the actual question because my mind just blanked out. It was about races. I do have, I actually have a really good mixture because my art is mostly based in femme and queerness. I feel like I have a lot of queer artists by prints, or not queer artists, queer people by prints, and I have a lot of women by prints. But I've also had a lot of men collect my art originals, so it's kind of all over the place. My mentor told me in the past that these are kind of called target segment audiences. And so you can have like an audience for prints and you can have an audience for art originals, and they could be totally different. But it's important to know who's buying what. That way you can market your stuff to them appropriately.
Very valid. Thank you.
I have another question.
Yeah.
How do you make it possible for yourself to really keep to your schedule? Because for myself, I really recognize the story that you told earlier about the artist that went back 5 times, because that kind of is my story.
Yeah.
And being a single mother, raising a child, then it's always for me been the question, okay, where do I put my time? And how much of my time do I put where? So how did you make it possible for yourself to say, well, this is how I'm going to maintain the schedule. This is, if I feel that I'm backing out, this is my support system that will hold me accountable. How did you make that really like a practical thing for yourself?
Yeah. So I will tell you, when I got back to work after I lost everything, I specifically looked for a job that could be close to full-time / part-time, so like 30 hours a week. And during the interview, I literally set boundaries. I was like, I'm an artist. I need to be able to work on my art, and I want to be able to work this many times a week. And I can't go home feeling tired, because if I go home feeling tired, then I'm not gonna be able to make art anymore. And so I told them, I was like, I can do this, but don't call me in on the weekends or be on call, stuff like that. I was like, no. So I set boundaries in the beginning, and that's not with just this job, that's with everybody. I recognize it's a little bit different with a baby. But when you have children, make sure that, I think it's important to set a schedule at the very least, and set boundaries in your life to make sure that you can continue to move forward in your art career and making that transition to full time. It will be difficult, but having that schedule and having that discipline is going to make such a difference. So if it's just for 1 hour a day where you're making dinner and you're listening to a podcast, that's something that you're learning while you're working, you know? So definitely set time aside for you when you can work on that by yourself, and set boundaries. Anybody else?
Hi, I'm Kiara. I had a question regarding good podcasts to really listen to for as an artist. I'm always listening to podcasts, but they're more like getting my life together as an adult in adulthood versus like as an artist, and just interested in hearing some of your, like, I guess, top 5 if you have.
Yeah. So for a while, I was actually listening to 3 podcasts regularly. One of them was the Culture Hustlers podcast, which is by that was that art business school that I told you all about earlier. So that's one of the ones I was listening to regularly. I was also listening to I Like Your Work podcast, and they bring in artists all the time and curators as well. people that are basically in the industry, and they talk about their experience, you know, what they're doing differently, projects they're working on. So that's another one that I recommend. And then there was one more. It's called the Create Podcast. And Create Podcast is mostly targeted to women, but everyone can learn from everything and everyone. So don't let that bother you. But they would bring in other artists and curators as well, and they would talk about their experience as artists and how they got ahead. So what I recommend you do, find your favorite streaming service and literally type in like art podcasts and see what comes up. Those are the ones I like the most, but find what works best for you. And learn from those people and their experiences, especially if you are kind of working with a small budget. I like look, I like to I y'all like I really started from ground zero. So don't be afraid to be creative about how you learn and take what you learn from them and apply it to what you're doing as an artist. So those are my top 3.
All right, thank you.
I actually have a question about something that you said earlier, Onnissia, which is, I guess, how did you figure out who your base target art audience was for your different products? And how did you market to them, or how did you reach them?
Yeah. So it kind of worked backwards with this one. I figured out who I wanted to target first. And then I moved forward from there. And so me personally, like again, I make art that's about women and queer people, queer folk. And so because I'm both, and those people connect to my story the most, right? And so that's my audience. Um, and I would make originals and I would make prints. And I found out that with the print segment, that was most affordable. People would gravitate towards those more. And so I would begin making sure I would research hashtags that those people were following, and I would make sure I would incorporate it into my artwork or into my Instagram feed. And a lot of people really, I would literally during when I was taking commissions from people and interviewing them for the process, I would ask every single time, how'd you hear about me? How'd you hear about me? And every single time they said Instagram. So do not underestimate the power of social media. But again, I kind of figured out who I wanted my target audience to be first, and I worked backwards.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. So we have about 1 minute left. If anybody has any final questions for Miss Onnissia.
I have a question, but I don't know if it's gonna fit into like 1 minute because
Go for it.
it is. So you definitely touched on like not selling Black trauma, and that's a huge thing. You know, like trauma is an inevitable piece of Black history. That's something you know in a lot of our lives and stuff. But in artwork, it definitely does not have to be put there. But I don't know. It's just like a weird space to kind of just like. It's not specifically focusing on I'm about to sell Black trauma, but it's it's certain things that are tied into storytelling where trauma is a piece of it. And even within my own work, I'm trying. That really like struck with me, and I was just like, damn, I want to make sure I'm not just pushing this shit back up on our people like that. So it is something that I'm really thinking of, and I just want to hear more of your thoughts on it.
Yeah. I saw recently, I forget who it was. Again, I was just scrolling on Instagram. And I saw another Black artist who was very adamant about who collected her artwork. So if you don't want to sell your artwork to a certain group of people, or if someone says, I want to buy this art piece, and you realize that they're a piece of shit, excuse my language, but like, you don't have to sell that to them. You don't have to do it. You get to pick and choose who you give your artwork to. You can do that. You're allowed to do that. So if you realize that someone is a bigot and they want to buy an art piece because it's going to be expensive one day and they can invest in it, you get to say no.
I appreciate that because that ties into the whole representation with galleries as well too. I don't want to be in a situation where they're just about to sell some shit. Man,
Yeah.
fuck that. Yeah, I hear you.
Cool. Does anybody else have any more questions? Otherwise, if not, feel free to either email me or connect with us on Instagram or whatever, we can also connect you with Onnissia. She dropped a lot of her information. This entire webinar was recorded and it will be posted on our YouTube channel if you want to relook at some of the resources that Onnissia had dropped for us, or any kind of information regarding this conversation. So Onnissia, thank you so much for the time that you took to talk with us. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate everybody who was able to attend here. And Black artists are dope, so I love being able to have these rooms and be able to drop knowledge to support each other. So thank you all. Have a great rest of your nights.
Thanks, guys. Take it easy.